One interesting thing about grammar is that it's easy if you do it right. Grammar is easy to learn in context because we humans are good at pattern recognition. And if we see something in context over and over again, we end up learning it pretty easily. The same is true for vocabulary, but the difference is that you need to learn each word in context, or each word family at least. While with grammar, it's just a bunch of tenses, right? Mostly. So you have tens of thousands of words to learn, while you have 10, 15, or 20 different grammar. What should we call them? Grammar, yeah, tenses, let's say, like unit past, present, future, and conditionals, and a bunch of other things, but not much more. And you just learn to recognize the pattern. For example, like if you see that, let's say you learn in Russian, and you see verbs with an L in the end, and the phrase translated into whatever, and you see translation that the sentence is in the past. And the next time you see verbs ended in an L, like DLL, VDL, and so on, you see again that the sentence is in the past. How long do you need to figure out that the way to put verbs in the past in Russian is to put an L in the end? It's that simple. You don't need to study the rules. It's just pattern recognition. Same thing in English with the ed in the end, or the a, the o in Spanish, and all this stuff. It's just basic, simple pattern recognition. While if you don't know the vocab, there are thousands of words that you need to learn. So each one of them, having to see them in context, is going to take a lot more time, a lot more exposure to the language. That's why it's much better to memorize the vocabulary with associations, which is also easier to do and more fun than trying to learn grammar rules. You can also use associations. You can use mnemonics to study grammar rules. I've done it before, but it's simply not as fun, not as effective, because it's not as visualizable, and also it's just not worth it because you can learn grammar easily simply by being exposed to it in context. So learn enough vocabulary, get the input afterwards when you know enough vocabulary, and with enough input, yes, input is important. With enough input, you will learn all the grammar. And if you keep making mistakes, sometimes it does happen. Even if you, let's say you live in a country and you've been living there for years, and you understand the language really well, but you still make tons of mistakes when you speak. It does happen. The solution is translation. I used to be a translator. My master's degree was in translation. I've done a lot of translating. I used to translate content for big tech and stuff, and I worked in an embassy as well. I learned this while working as a translator. If you make a lot of mistakes, translating into the language is the best way to find where you're making those mistakes. You'll see patterns there as well, and you'll correct your mistakes. Yeah, you can use bilingual text. You can use Google Translate, anything like that, any kind of translation software. You translate from your language into the target language. And if you're making grammar mistakes, you'll see them. You'll immediately notice the grammar mistakes by comparing your translation with the machine translation. And if you keep doing this, you'll very quickly find out where you're making most of your mistakes, and you'll stop doing them. So yeah, learn the vocab, get the input, and if you keep making mistakes, or if you want to know if you're making mistakes or not, maybe you don't know that you're making mistakes. Maybe you're not aware of. People are not aware that they're making mistakes. In this case, if you want to know if your grammar is good or not when you speak, start translating. Start writing in your language and translating into the target language, and compare it with machine translation, and you'll find out. This is very good for languages like German, for example. Der, die, das. all that stuff, which is quite complicated and not fun to learn. If you use translation, you can correct a lot of mistakes. There are other tricks to learn that stuff as well. I can show you mnemonics for grammar at some point, but like how to learn the feminine, masculine, neuter, and all that. But I think the best thing you can do is learn it in context and then translate to correct your mistakes.